Thank you all for being here. My name is Diana Reno, and today I'm going to be presenting my Kilachand Keystone on hiring practices in Kenya's refugee-serving organizations. I just want to say thank you to my advisor, Dr. Rachel Brule. Here's a quick overview of what I'll be going over. First, context, methodology, my 2 case studies, and then the conclusions that I was able to draw from my research. So, as a brief overview of why it's important to study the implications of refugee employment. The first time the rights of refugees were formally recognized by the international community was with the 1951 UN Convention relating to the status of refugees. It states that refugees have the right to housing, education, and to pursue employment. However, in many countries, refugees face tangible, legal, and practical barriers to their rights to work. According to one study, at least 55% of refugees, or about 16 million people as of 2022, reside in a country that significantly restricts their right to work. So I chose to look at Kenya for this project because, as not that many people know, Kenya is one of the top refugee hosting countries in the world, with a refugee population of almost 700,000 people. In 2021, Kenya actually passed the Refugees Act, which vastly expanded their refugee population's rights to employment, movement, and education. It says that refugees, quote, shall have the right to engage individually or in a group in gainful employment or enterprise, or to practice a profession or trade where he holds qualifications recognized by competent authorities in Kenya. So, given this expansion of refugees' legal rights to employment under this act, I asked the question, are refugees actually able to access employment in reality? And I chose to conduct this study with refugee-serving organizations because I assumed that they would be more aware of this policy and therefore more able to implement it into their organization's practices. However, I found when I reached out to these organizations that none actually employed refugees. So I expanded my research to explore the overall hiring practices of these organizations, whether they were creating jobs in the communities they worked in, and how they conceptualized hiring while working so closely with refugee populations. So my methodology, I first analyzed the growing body of literature that exists on the impacts of refugee employment and the benefits for both the community and the refugee populations. I then conducted case studies into 2 international refugee-serving NGOs to examine their employment practices in the context of this literature. I then drew conclusions from both case studies and synthesized them into a preliminary best practices report. For my first case study, I worked with the Association for Aid and Relief, or AAR Japan, which is a Tokyo-based NGO that provides emergency relief and livelihood support to refugee populations. I interviewed Ryanosuke Shima, the acting country representative for Kenya. Mr. Ryanosuke explained that AAR Japan was unable to hire refugees, but that they offered employment opportunities for both locals and expatriates. With AAR Japan, there was a fairly clear divide between jobs designated for locals and expatriates. International candidates almost always found out about jobs through listings on sites like ReliefWeb, and these positions were more often geared towards administration and grant writing, and all the candidates were tested on computer literacy and Microsoft skills. Local hires, in contrast, tended to do more fieldwork, community outreach, and needs assessments. Over the years, AAR Japan has developed relationships with community leaders who periodically request that more jobs be made available to locals, and these positions are often advertised by posting physical notices on notice boards. And Mr. Ryanosuke said that they accommodate these requests as often as possible to maintain these relationships. My second case study looked at the Danish Refugee Council and analyzed 10 of their job listings on the online hiring platform ReliefWatch. I broke down the qualifications for these 10 listings, which were all active at the same time. I found that 4 of the 10 jobs included special encouragement to applicants who are women or members of minority communities. 2 of the 10 positions encouraged applicants to apply who were nationals or diaspora. Notably, the positions appealing to women and minorities have a lower threshold of educational attainment, but a higher level of required English language knowledge. Positions being advertised to nationals and diaspora candidates still required an advanced degree and 4 to 5 years of relevant professional experience. Here are some word cloud visuals to represent the hard skills that these listings were looking for, and the top categories, as you can see, are technical writing, budgeting, and data management. And here are the soft skills, with the top categories being management, relationship building, and organization. So my takeaways from this second case study is that it's encouraging to see job listings specifically targeting minority, female, diaspora, or local applicants. However, There are many barriers to entry into this work, such as requirements of advanced degrees and 4 to 5 years of relevant experience, which, combined with what we learned from AAR Japan, seems to indicate that these positions are designed specifically for high-qualified, competitive expatriate applicants. So my final conclusions are that refugees are not being hired in many of these organizations, as I mentioned, possibly due to technicalities in the Refugee Act, a lack of awareness of what the Act is and what it does, or a lack of a motivation on the parts of international NGOs specifically. I found that in my 2 case studies, positions were either formally or informally designated for either expatriate or local candidates. Locals were more likely to learn about open positions through community-based channels of communication, such as listings posted on notice boards. Expatriates more often found out about open positions on online job boards. It seems that both locals and expatriates were hired on temporary contracts typically, but that permanent administrative roles almost entirely went to expatriates. In the future, it could be very valuable for international organizations, especially those working directly with refugee populations in Kenya, to make a more intentional effort to create opportunities for local employment. Additionally, there needs to be more public awareness of the Refugees Act so that it can be fully utilized where applicable. Thank you for listening.
Do we have any questions?
Hello. Thank you. That was fantastic. I know in a lot of American cities, there's a trend of hiring a lot from like the local African American population because it's easier to do community outreach that way. Are there services that you think these refugee servicing organizations just aren't as capable of doing because they're not hiring from the population they're serving? And what shift do you think might come out of having a more like representative workforce for, say, the Danish Refugee Council?
Yeah. I think first and foremost, the literature I was reviewing was looking at how the positive outcomes of hiring refugees in terms of like economic empowerment and mental health outcomes, but there's also a pretty widely recognized benefit to having people within a community able to do outreach. But that requires, obviously, taking the time and the effort to make an environment in which you can hire people with cultural competency and also abiding within these very strict technicalities of the Refugees Act. So that would be a deliberate and probably very costly initiative for these NGOs, but I think it would be very valuable, and in other organizations outside of Kenya has been a very successful initiative that a lot of organizations have undertaken.
Hi.
Hi.
Incredible project, which I've seen you working on it, so I'm not surprised. If you had more time, what directions would you want to take this project? Like, what more would you add to it? What more questions would you be able to ask?
I would love to have gotten a lot more responses from NGOs on the ground. Obviously, they're laden down with an immense amount of work that I couldn't possibly fathom, but I think if I was able to expand this, I would want to do probably on the ground field work in order to interview not just people who are directly in charge of hiring, but people who are obviously experiencing the direct implications of hiring practices so that they could speak to that experience with a little more objectivity than the people that I was able to speak to.
Are there any other questions?
Hi, thank you. That was great. I'm very intrigued by the fact that Kenya harbors so many refugees because that really just doesn't seem to be publicized in mainstream media and news outlets. So why do you think that is, especially with how much of a hot topic refugees have been in the news over the last, really, I think, 5 or 6 years?
I think it's a very interesting question that I've thought about a lot because most of the top refugee hosting countries are in Africa or in the Middle East, and that is very underrecognized because in Europe, there is so much public backlash and so much political controversy around hosting refugees. And as we saw pretty recently, the UK decided that they would be sending refugees seeking asylum in the UK to Rwanda, actually. And I think there's just kind of an attitude amongst European and Western countries specifically that once they're in a country that we're less politically invested in, let's say, invested in the political backlash that might come with that, that's kind of out of sight, out of mind, which is not helpful to anybody.
We have time for 1 or 2 more questions.
So again, really nice presentation. In the chart from the Danish Refugee Council, it seemed that all the jobs they were advertising are college degree, sort of white collar jobs. But I mean, a large fraction of people are sort of, working class laboring kind of jobs, but that's not the sort of employment that NGOs offer. Any thoughts on that, or at least making connections maybe, or?
Definitely. And the interview I did with the person from AAR Japan was very clear that, yes, we test on technical skills and on Microsoft and on Word and on things like that because those are required for the jobs that we are asking people to do. So that's a really interesting balance to try to strike between having people who are coming into this job very competent in the skills that are needed and also providing opportunities for people to get on-the-job skills training, which in a lot of cases, maybe not in the more technical aspects of things, but in other jobs such as project management and things like that, there are a lot of opportunities for on-the-job skills training that wouldn't be unmanageable, let's say. So I think, again, that would take a deliberate and intentional effort on the part of these organizations, but that also takes a commitment to doing that because you find it valuable and not just because it's going to be efficient or valuable to your organization, if that makes sense.
Thank you, Diana.